my phone on airplane mode. There we are. Okay. Did you tell your friends to watch it on Facebook? So this is where, right here. What's the delay? How much is the time delay? There's the time delay. Okay, good. It's more than 5. Oh yeah, absolutely. Okay, we got the music ready. Thanks for sharing, Jamie. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's 8 o'clock on Thursday night, and that can only mean one thing. It's time for the 38th installment of the Age Out Angels Radio Hour. My name is Greg Rapport. I'm the founder and executive director of Age Out Angels. We are a 501c3 nonprofit corporation that provides one-to-one mentors to youth who are in need. And this program is brought to you every week at this same time, courtesy of Doc G and the fine people here at Hamilton Radio who allow us to use this airtime. Doc G is at the big board tonight along with Robin. Good to see you both here. I'd like to tell all of you out there about some of the other great programs here on Hamilton Radio. You know, people that I talk to still refer to the Age Out Angels Radio Hour as a kind of a one-off podcast without realizing that this radio station has been around for 20 years because the internet is how more and more people receive their media these days, and the numbers are growing. But just like traditional radio, there is a regular lineup of shows here every day, and their following is increasing all the time. The only thing that's different between this and traditional radio is the delivery system. There are 3 separate channels on continuously to satisfy anyone's taste. A lot of music gets played here. A lot of music you can't hear in other places get played here. And Wednesday, I just want to tell you for a second, if you like a little lighter approach to life, at 7 p.m. on Channel 2, it's the Alpha Male Radio Show with Ed Ruffalo. And then at 8:30, it's the Animal House Radio Show. So if it's Wednesday night, hump day, and you just need to sort of take a little break, turn on Hamilton Radio Channel 2 at 7 p.m. And stay with us for the next 2.5 hours. So after this show is over, don't do it right now, okay? But after this show is over, make sure you sign in to www.hamiltonradio.net and be a part of this family that's growing in numbers every single day. My guest tonight in the studio is Jamie Parker, Manager of Programs and Services at TASK, which stands for Trenton Area Soup Kitchen. But what you're going to find out is that TASK is so much more than a soup kitchen. And as the Manager of Programs, Jamie Parker is all about understanding the needs and providing solutions for people. So I think you'll be amazed and inspired after you hear what she has to say, so make sure you stick around for that. Let me remind you that we are on here every Thursday from 8 to 9 with the Age Out Angels Radio Hour. We have some intelligent, caring people coming up as guests on the show. Next week, May 24th, we're going to have actual young people from the local Trenton Youth Advisory Committee right here in the studio. I say that like it's like an attraction that you can't see anywhere else. Actual young people. But the fact is, we don't get to hear enough young people say what they need, and we don't listen enough. We're frequently busy telling young people what we think they need. And so next week we're going to get a chance to hear from some teens in their own voice. And that's the 24th. On May 31st, we'll welcome Joshua Meekins from Give Back. And on June 7th, my guest is an interesting lady named Shalita O'Neill. She's the president and CEO of the Fostering Change Network Foundation. So be sure to tune in every week at 8 p.m. for what is our unfiltered look at the child welfare system. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what makes this program unique. If you care about our nation's youth, if you care about the child welfare system, this is where you come to hear the truth. We're not afraid to confront the problems, and we talk about solutions in the hope that we can arrive at best practices that can be applied wherever you live. If you have specific questions, you can call in, or you can write them to me either in the comments field on my Facebook page or directly to me at greg@ageoutangels.org. I answer every single question personally. As you can tell, youth are of paramount importance to me, but if you care enough to correspond with me directly, then understand that you're important to me as well. So feel free to call in tonight if you have questions and comments. The number is 609-807-2492. Again, 609-807-2492. And right now, I want you to take a moment and hit that share button on Facebook, because these are issues that deserve attention. Like I said, you can't get this info anywhere else, so please give everyone you know a chance to hear this program. And look us up online at www.ageoutangels.org. Moving on, May is National Foster Care Month, as I've said now since the beginning of May. Blue is the foster care color. My guest tonight is in blue. I'm in all blue, I'd like you to know if you're listening to this on radio. I am blue right down to my sneakers. I'm a vision in blue. That's what I am, in honor of Foster Care Month. But I have to tell you, I'm not blue. I'm not blue. I'm actually feeling pretty good tonight. We were able to help a couple of young people get food who were about to go hungry. And I'm feeling really, really good about that. And we're getting to the end of the year, the school year, when a lot of the young people that we work with are students who kind of need help getting across the finish line, if you know what I mean. Maybe they slacked off a little bit at some point in their school year. Maybe they got moved from one school to another. There are a lot of reasons that this sort of thing can happen, but we always find out now, with about 20 days left to go in the school year, that somebody's in a boatload of trouble and needs help. You know, just needs a little help to get across that finish line and maybe not get left back, or something like that. So we're about to kick into our tutoring education part of our year, and that's always kind of exciting, and it's nice to see when when a young person really works hard in like a 2 or 3 week stretch and realizes that, well, they didn't have to slack off during the year, but at least they get through. It makes everybody kind of feel good. So I'm not blue. We'll start tonight with a quick hit from the Idaho Press Tribune, an article written by Kevin Harper having to do with National Foster Care Month. In the most recent fiscal year, there were 437,000 children in foster care nationwide. Of those, 81,000 are in the critical age group of 15 to 18, with their emancipation on the horizon. And if you know me, you know I can't stand that word, emancipation, because that sounds like a good thing when really getting aged out, getting kicked to the curb, is not a good thing for a lot of these people. 20,000 age out each year at age 18. For most Americans, 20,000 may seem like kind of a small number. We are a country of 278 million people after all. And thus of small consequence, clearly someone else's problem, yet it's not. It's your problem and mine, and it's an enormous one. And if you don't think about foster children with your heart, think about it with your wallet for a second. Think about the economic footprint alone of the 20,000 plus foster youth aging out from state custody into adulthood. The impact on society is overwhelming. Statistics suggest that many of these 20,000 young adults will raise kids of their own, who will eventually be in foster care, thus perpetuating the cycle. Crime rates are higher in this group. Many will end up on public assistance. But those who break out of the statistics have one interesting thing in common. They had mentors and role models who invested in them, and that's what Age Out Angels is all about. For those who become a statistic, please understand, it's not their fault. Kids don't enter foster care because of their own behavior, but usually because of the actions of the adults in their lives. They're not worse people by nature. They just haven't had the benefit of the role models that you and I may have had to help launch us into adulthood. So now, leaving economics aside for a second, it is heartbreaking that we're raising a growing class of people for whom hopelessness is normal. They haven't been taught, or at least haven't yet learned, the value of family, love, and hope. And during National Foster Care Month, it's time for Americans who have a heart for mentoring to rise to this task. And if you have the skills, the heart, and the thick enough skin, get started today. You can volunteer at Age Out Angels or any mentoring type program that's in your area. Because sadly, most foster youth have never had anyone give them hope that they can rise above their childhood trauma. But hope is exactly what they need to hear from the positive role models in their lives, starting with you. An interesting article this week from the Ann E. Casey Foundation. They just released a new report called A Bold Vision for Getting Juvenile Probation Right. New report lays out a vision of sweeping changes and new expanded priorities for juvenile probation. The report, called Transforming Juvenile Probation, A Vision for Getting It Right, offers a blueprint to reimagine juvenile justice to get better outcomes for young people. Probation plays a pivotal role in the juvenile justice system, with nearly 400,000 receiving it in some form each year. Research demonstrates that surveillance-oriented probation, that's the term for it, surveillance-oriented probation, which means a judge imposing a list of rules that the young person must follow, and a probation officer keeping tabs on the youth to monitor compliance, is not an effective strategy for reversing delinquent behavior, especially for youth at low risk of rearrest. Worse, probation often pulls youth who pose minimal risk to public safety deeper into the system. In many jurisdictions, more youth are committed to residential facilities for technical probation violations, such as breaking curfew, than for violent felonies or any other type of law-breaking behavior. This unnecessary confinement disproportionately affects youth of color and exacerbates the already severe racial and ethnic disparities plaguing juvenile justice. So this report shows that it doesn't have to be this way. New knowledge about adolescent behavior and brain development and evidence about intervention strategies that do reduce delinquency can equip people in the field to get probation right. Getting probation right means being deliberate about race and drawing on families and communities to help youth build the skills they need to mature, according to Stephen Bishop, a senior associate with the Foundation's Juvenile Justice Strategy Group. Probation is too often focused on trying to fix youth so they will not break the law again. What it should be is a lever to draw on the resources that will help youth achieve long-term success. And that's how we make whole communities safe. Very interesting report. If you ever get a chance to go to the Ann E. Casey Foundation online and look at all that and all the other reports that they have. And finally, in the first part of our segment tonight, from the Chronicle of Social Change, there's an interesting article from New Mexico. New Mexico celebrates the first ever tax credit for hiring foster youth. This is written by Maureen Lunn. It's the story of Michaela Baca, who began applying for jobs and interviewing when she aged out of foster care in New Mexico at age 18, but no one would hire her because she didn't have any job experience. And here's why. While she was in the system, she received a stipend and didn't need to have a job. But when she was no longer eligible for the stipend, which we all know happens suddenly for everybody, she had zero work experience. So Baca and a group of her peers helped pass New Mexico Senate Bill 231, the Foster Youth Tax Credits Law, which enables those who employ qualified foster youth for at least 20 hours a week to claim a tax credit of up to $1,000. The new tax credit is already being utilized by New Mexico businesses, and Baca is among the first former foster youth to receive employment because of it. She's working as a receptionist as a law firm in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And New Mexico, Ed, happens to be the first state to pass a law of this kind. Now, a group of child welfare and workforce sector advocates has been pushing a national version of a foster youth tax credit, and they call it the Improved Employment Outcomes for Foster Youth Act. Basically says that youth who were in foster care at age 16 would be eligible under the Federal Work Opportunity Tax Credit. And if you've never heard of the Federal Work Opportunity Tax Credit, it's a credit that began 2 decades ago as an incentive to hire veterans. But over the years, its scope has widened to include citizens with certain hiring challenges. So we hope that other states will follow New Mexico's lead in that regard and help foster youth find a path to employment. You can call in tonight. 609-807-2492 is the number. You can also write comments and questions on my Facebook page. And I hope you'll take a second to let me know that you're out there. We are attracting between 30 and 40,000 listeners every week. And we need your help because we want to double that number in the next 12 months. So with that in mind, please share. Tell your friends to tune into this program right now so we can spread the word. And you do that by hitting the share button on Facebook. Or if you want to be really sweet, send a mass email to your address book. And please ask your friends to share it with their friends. It's simple for you to do your part and help us spread the word. We are so grateful for that. So please do it right now. Hit that share button. And finally, one more note from the Annie Casey Foundation. Here's a surprise. Despite recovery, kids of color now more likely to live in high poverty neighborhoods. Despite the improved economy since the Great Recession, African American, Latino, and American Indian kids are still more likely to live in high poverty neighborhoods. All 3 racial groups experienced a 4-year decline in the economic well-being of their neighborhoods. Research shows that children are more likely to thrive when they come from communities where families are financially stable. Let's take a short break. Please hit that share button on Facebook. I'll be back in 1 minute with Jamie Parker from the Trenton Area Soup Kitchen. It amazes me how many people come from programs like AmeriCorps and Teach America and end up following that path. And we are back, and sitting next to me is Jamie Parker, Manager of Programs and Services at the Trenton Area Soup Kitchen. Jamie, welcome to the Age Out Angels Radio Hour.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's great to see you here. You have an interesting story. I mean, you sort of got involved with AmeriCorps.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. So I was in college. I went to Rider University, and there was a flyer that said, "Do you like to do community service, and do you need money to pay for college?" And the answer to both of those was yes. And that was the AmeriCorps program. So I served in the AmeriCorps program throughout my college career. And then when I graduated, it was my senior year, and Dan and Yogurt had an essay contest, and they asked for essays about a nonprofit that was a good one, and that you would write an essay, and then the nonprofit would get some money, and you would get some money. And so I wrote an essay, and I was a runner-up, so I got a little bit of money, but the bigger thing for me was the executive director of the soup kitchen at the time saw it, and he recognized that I was able to write well, and the grant writer for the organization was leaving to go to grad school, so he asked me if I wanted that position, and I have been there ever since.
Wow. I guess, well, you don't win essay contests if you can't write, so.
I don't think it was rigged. I like to think I have some kind of skill set.
Ed is out there. Hi, Ed. Thanks for tuning in. Scott is out there. Javier is out there listening tonight. We welcome you all to the radio program. So let's take a sort of an umbrella view of what Task is, the Trenton Area Soup Kitchen. Did a little research. It's sort of been around for a while, and it's a kind of a, it's almost a romantic story. It started in 1982.
Yes.
If I understand correctly, and it started in the basement of a church.
Yes. It was a collaborative effort. I think there was a lot of individuals and organizations in Trenton that noticed there's a problem with hunger. There's a lot of homeless people here. There's a lot of people who just are not getting fed. What can we do about it? And they started it in the basement of a church, and it grew from there.
And one step at a time until they finally got the space that they're in now from the city.
Yes.
Right? So
yeah.
the city recognized.
Yeah, the building, so the soup kitchen itself, there was a period of time, it went from kind of location to location. We were in the basement of the Salvation Army for a number of years. And it was kind of, there was a book, Lee Seglin, he was a former board member from Task, but he wrote a book about Task's history, and he did some interviews, and there was a lot of the not in my backyard syndrome, where when trying to find a good location. But eventually the city did make a plot of land available, and we've been there. We built the building in '91 there, and so far we've had, I think we're doing another expansion. I think we're on expansion number 4.
Wow, and that's the main location, but you also sort of have these sort of satellite.
Yes, we've got about 14 satellites all over Mercer County.
That's very advanced. So how many meals are we up to a day that we're?
Approximately 1,000 meals a day.
1,000 meals a day.
Yeah.
That's amazing and sad at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
It's something that we're always trying to put ourselves out of business, but at the same time we want to be able to meet the need. Like if the need's out there, it exists. So we want to serve those meals. We want to meet that need, but at the same time, it's sad that the need's out there.
Yeah, that it's absolutely necessary. It's what I tell all the people in Trenton Police Department is to find another job because we're going to end crime. And they laugh the same way that you do. I say, I'm giving you guys fair warning. It'll take us a couple of years, but we're going to end crime, in the city of Trenton. So what we're talking about here, I assume, are mostly adults.
Yes.
Right?
Well, and that's in part because our hours are really daytime hours. And it's really there are a lot of other programs that kind of serve the youth and that serve children, and like school. Really, kids should be in school during the daytime. If we have kids that come too many days in a row, we're like, we'll pull the parents to the side and say, what's going on here? Why aren't your children in school? Let's solve this problem together. Right. So the majority of the people that we serve at the soup kitchen are adults.
Do you see, can you identify like a homeless kid who comes in need of a meal? Because you do serve dinner, right?
Oh yeah, no, and we do have families that come in for dinner. We have some children, not a great many, but we've got some children. Yeah. And part of the soup kitchen, so we have a no questions open door policy. So we're open to anybody who's hungry. If there's some people who they have an apartment, but they can't afford to pay their rent and their medical bills and their transportation and their child care, and there's just too many expenses. So we open our door and say, listen, come, don't make food a question. Come eat here, and if you have to eat here, but you can pay your like whatever you have to do. Don't skip the food.
I see this happen so much, like where people will judge folks who don't have a lot. Yeah. And they'll say, well, you have a house, you have a car, or you have a something. Why are you asking me for money? Well, it's because they just don't have enough money to go around.
Right.
And sort of make the things happen that move their lives forward.
Yeah, no, and it's a common thing for the people that we serve is they select which bills they're going to pay this month. Do I pay my utilities, or do I pay my health insurance, or do I pay which one do I pay this month?
Right. Yeah.
And
if I am working, am I making just enough money to make sure I don't get enough money? So is it the prescription drugs?
Yeah,
you know,
and then
or
you
the
have
food.
a car breaks down, or you have like,
Yeah.
and that can be devastating. You get a flat tire and it's over.
Yeah, well, the soup kitchen. I mean, people don't often separate this in their minds, but um, a person could have an apartment and they could have a kitchen, but when the oven breaks,
Yeah,
then suddenly all the food pantries in the world can't help them prepare,
right.
a meal. So are they supposed to starve for a week until they can save the money to
Right. No,
you know,
I think
have it
that
fixed?
it's so expensive to live in New Jersey and in Trenton, and it's heartbreaking to think that anyone has to make a decision as to, well, am I going to be able to eat?
Right.
And so we want to take that decision off the table. Yes, eat here. The other things we will help you with what we can, but food, don't make that a question.
Yes, and to our friends who are out there in Southern California and Northern California too, it's the same way. It's so ridiculously expensive.
Yeah.
If you're in the New York area to do things that cost a lot less in other places. So tell me where the food comes from.
So we get most of our food from Mercer Street Friends Food Bank, and that's so the food bank, it's a separate nonprofit, and their mission is to kind of acquire all the healthy, nutritious food that they can from all resources. So we get as much as we can from the food bank. We also get food donations from grocery stores or from bakeries. A lot of times we'll get like day-old bread where it's not bad, but it's just not as fresh as customers would like it. So they donate it to the soup kitchen.
Right.
And so we'll get individuals who donate food. Some people have gardens and they bring us their produce that they grow. But the majority of the food that we get is from the food bank.
Right, and when you and I talked before about, when people, like individuals, suddenly show up with food.
Yes.
You have to follow sort of basic food safety guidelines.
Yeah. Yes. We serve a vulnerable population where when you're low income, automatically you've got increased vulnerability in terms of like if your house isn't hot or cold enough, and if your house or if you're homeless and you're sleeping outside. There's a lot of just health issues, and eating healthy is expensive, so we can't risk making our population sick. So if you have a tray of something and it was unopened and it was kept at the proper temperature, and yes, we can accept that, and that's fine. If you had your potato salad and it was sitting out in the sun all day, but you still got some left over, it's been opened.
Don't bring it.
Yeah, that one's better to just pitch that.
Yeah,
one.
you're just not allowed to serve it. It's not. I'm just trying to point out that when people try to do that and bring their leftover potato salad and get rejected,
Right.
they shouldn't feel bad. It's just the way food is that
Yeah.
you're not allowed to.
Yeah, it's for
situation.
safety for everyone.
Yeah.
And another thing that we like to tell people too is if you're debating having a food drive or donating money, if you donate money, we can buy more food than you can, because if we take that dollar and go to the food bank, we can buy 6 times the amount of food that you can buy at the grocery store.
You are clearly
So-
seasoned shoppers.
So yeah, we like to tell people that. But I mean, if donating the food is your thing, then I don't want to stop you. We will take it. We will put it to good use. But if you're on the fence, if you give us the dollar, we can buy more.
Make it worth $5.
We can stretch it.
Yes, indeed. So what do you do? How do you make decisions about balanced diet and stuff like that? Because I'm just thinking in my head, 1,000 meals is a truckload of food.
It's a lot. Yeah, we go through a lot of food. Our kitchen manager and our kitchen staff they do a tremendous job. Paul Jensen is our kitchen manager, and we've got a solid staff of cooks and kitchen prep aides that just do a fantastic job in making sure that we have healthy food and that we have enough to go around.
And I mean, let's face it. I mean, sometimes you're feeding people that may be their only meal of the day.
Right, and
Right.
that's a little bit of a challenge for us.
That changes the nature of the amount of calories.
Right. Yeah. So
that you put
we
into
want to
it.
make sure that we're giving folks, if this is the only meal that they can eat, that it's something that will be nutritious and healthy and substantial.
So in case you're out there wondering, why it is that we're talking about feeding homeless people on a on a show that focuses on child welfare. It's because every single day kids are aging out of the foster care system, and such a high percentage of them um, become homeless. And so you're feeding our foster alumni of tomorrow.
Well, what we see a lot is when you don't have a good support network, that's when you're vulnerable for homelessness. It's when you have family that you can go stay with, or you can go sleep on your uncle's couch, or that changes the game. But when you don't have that network, that's when you're at risk for, having to sleep out on the street, or when you exhaust your resources, when your uncle says, okay, you know what, you've stayed here too many times, I can't do it anymore. Like, that's when you've run out of
couches.
Resource. When you've run out of couches,
Yeah.
that's when it gets to the point where you're sleeping in places that are dangerous.
Right.
And it's a situation that we don't wish on anyone, but at the same time, at Task, we're grateful to be, like, we see at the holiday time, there are some people that we are where they go for Christmas, we're where they go for Thanksgiving. We're their family, and we're grateful to be able to be that. But it is, sometimes it's heartbreaking. Well, I'll have somebody come in and they'll bring news that you would normally call your best friend, or you'd normally call your parents and tell them, and they're coming to us first. We've got people,
Sure.
they pass the high school equivalency, and they run to the soup kitchen to tell us.
Yeah.
And it's a really cool feeling. But at the same time, I'm like, oh, like, did you call your family? I'm like, well,
My family's how I ended up here.
that's why I'm here. But we're grateful to be able to be there for people like that.
Sure. That's an absolutely beautiful thing. And I just also want to say a word to the people out there who are thinking about all those people who they believe are taking advantage, of you. Nobody, if you get an extra serving of turkey, it's not the end of the world, No, people aren't running into the soup kitchen going, oh, I put one over on them tonight.
No, I mean, and part of the thing too is because we're serving such a high volume, we really can't give people choice like we wish we could. I mean, like, I'm a vegetarian. If I were to go to the soup kitchen, I'd have to eat the tray in front of me. I couldn't say, well, actually, can you, like that. Because we serve such a high volume, we can't do that. So it's not your ideal situation. It's not the same as going to a restaurant. I mean, we do try to make the meals as best and appetizing, as healthy as possible, but it's not the same as being able to choose what you want to eat.
Absolutely.
So it's not. Yeah, we're not concerned about people taking advantage of us.
It's not the Ritz, and they're not taking advantage.
Yeah, no, that's not what's happening here.
Let's take a short break. We'll be back in 1 minute with some things that I think are going to amaze you from Jamie Parker. And we are back, and before we continue with Jamie Parker, I just want to give a special thank you to all the people who made donations to Age Out Angels this week, with special shout-outs to the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation for their very generous gift, as well as to a lady named Danielle Taylor, who made her contribution via the ETS Employee Giving Fund. Now, if you have an employee giving fund or a matching gifts foundation associated with your place of work, we would certainly appreciate your contacting us and telling us how we can participate in that. So feel free to private message me on Facebook or email to greg@ageoutangels.org, and let us take advantage of any matching gift programs that you may have out there. And remember, every time you purchase something from Amazon, you could be making a donation to Age Out Angels without spending a penny more. You heard correctly, it doesn't cost money. When you go to Amazon, there's the pop-up that offers you a chance to go to Amazon Smile. And if you make your purchase through Amazon Smile, you can designate Age Out Angels as your donation organization. So without it costing you more, a portion of your purchase will go to help children who need it the most. And if you want to friend me on Facebook, I can send you a link that will save you a few clicks and take you directly to where you can make Age Out Angels your designated organization for Amazon Smile. I also want to take a minute and thank Kurt Seldemridge, owner-operator of the Cave Rehearsal Recording Space in Pennsylvania, for providing our theme music as always, and Marty Light for playing sweet, sweet bass guitar on that. We thank both of you. If you have rehearsal recording needs, you can reach Kurt at thecave1876@gmail.com. Back with Jamie Parker, manager of programming. So, this is the part where we explain to folks that the Trenton Area Soup Kitchen is more than a meal.
Yes.
And you are actually in charge of a whole department that has to keep your finger on the pulse of what people may need,
Right.
and then create systems to sort of satisfy that. Did I just answer my own question?
Well, yeah.
So
I
how
mean,
do you do that? How do
so-
you keep your ear to the ground that
well,
way?
Feeding people is a band-aid. That's something that it's not. We're solving the immediate problem of being hungry, and that is a problem that needs to get solved immediately. But then the long-term, the hunger is just a symptom. It's a symptom of poverty.
Yeah.
So ultimately, the secondary and tertiary parts of our mission. Our first is feeding. That's our main thing. But then what we do after that is to work on helping people towards self-sufficiency and improving the quality of life. And those things are to help kind of boost people up and what we would hope is out of poverty, so that you don't need to come to us anymore, and that you can make your own decisions, and that you can have more choice in your life. So in order to do that, you really have to pay attention to what is happening in the community now. What are the people that we're seeing being most affected by, and is there something that we can do to help deal with the issues that they're
So
seeing?
identify those issues. I mean, what we're
Yes.
arriving at here is that poverty itself is complex.
Yes.
Poverty is not just, oh, they don't have enough money. That's what poverty is. That's certainly part of it.
Right.
You know, hunger and financial problems are
Right.
symptoms of that.
Right.
But poverty is complex. So what are like some of the different sort of categories, I guess you'd say, of issues that people have? Like you must see second generation and third generation.
Yes, and there's
Poverty.
all different demographics. There's some people who their whole life, that's their parents and their grandparents and their great parents, that they've always known poverty. They've always known, living in buildings that are falling apart. That's what they've always lived with.
Right.
And then we've got other folks who come from a background that is not that, but they had something traumatic happen to them, and now they find themselves in a room full of strangers, and they're in a very different environment from where they grew up. We've got people who just kind of, like, tragedy is struck, and they ended up losing things that they didn't imagine they'd lose, but it happens all too much.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, if people who listen to this program know that you can find yourself homeless in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
Just kids who are in a car that's in a car accident. And
Yeah.
suddenly, parents are incapacitated and there.
And that's it.
Yeah.
Yes. And yeah. So it's not too complicated. It's not too difficult to get into a position of this.
Mm-hmm. I love this part where you mentioned this before in our pre-interview, that maybe people have a diploma but can't read.
Oh yes. So yeah. So that's some
How does that? Of course,
Yeah.
that's how is not your problem to answer.
Yeah, that's
But-
it's how to fix it, but part of that is so that's another one of the issues that it has to do with our education system, and the education system that was in place 30 years ago. Like what? Because we've got adults who graduated from high school, but they're reading at like a second grade level,
Yeah.
and they have their diploma, but it's meaningless. So it's a matter of trying to identify, okay, what are the issues? What is it that you need? Okay, literacy is huge. Help with disabilities and mental illness is huge in our community. We have a lot of mental illness. We've got a lot of undiagnosed disabilities. I'm sure if we tested our folks for learning disabilities or dyslexia, it'd probably be high.
Yeah.
But what our role is okay. How can we fix it? How can we help you? So like with our adult education program, we have one-on-one tutoring. We can go through as many systems as we can to help one person. For example, we had one woman. She came to us. She couldn't read at all, and she had a tutor who worked one-on-one with her. She went through, I think, like 6 different reading learning systems, and finally she found one that worked.
Yeah.
And now she's reading at like a high school level, and that's a huge thing. That's so big in her life. It's changed her life.
Well, it's kind of beyond schools to a point, because if you find that people do have a particular learning issue, right? Well, then after that, you have to really sit down and delve deep and try to diagnose what that issue is, and are they an auditory learner? Are they a visual learner?
Right,
Do they learn by repetition, or do they not learn by repetition? What are the things? And that's really asking a lot.
Yeah. And that's so what we do for our one-on-one program, one of the reasons that it works so well is because it's one-on-one. The folks that we serve a lot of times did not do well in classrooms.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, in the classroom, like, you got to keep up, and if you don't keep up, then you just get an F, and then we're on to the next lesson. So when we've got the one-on-one program, if it takes you 3 months to learn long division, then for 3 months you can work on long division. It's fine. This is your pace.
Good. That's wonderful. And then of course we have people who may be highly educated and wind up with like addiction problems and things that.
Yes, that's another one that we see commonly, and it's heartbreaking, because there are folks who are very smart and who also they've got credentials, but that addiction is weighing them down.
Yeah.
And
the sad part is the root causes of these things are not being addressed.
Right.
They're just not. You're doing the best you can to help them overcome the problems, but certainly the root causes of things like addiction and mental illness, and the one that kills me is if they happen to have a criminal record and then suddenly they're not hireable.
Yes, and it's very easy to get a criminal record, and
Yes,
even like if you're I know one gentleman who was homeless and he was sleeping in an abandoned building, so he was arrested for trespassing, and he went to jail, and the charge was it's related to things that were really kind of beyond his control, that he didn't have a place to be, and so now he's going to jail, and now he's got a record. Yeah.
Right. Now he's a criminal.
Right. So that to me, it's heartbreaking, because he's a smart guy, but now he's got that on his record, and it's this black mark that is going to follow him, and he's going to have to overcome that now.
Yeah. We see also a lot of this in the LGBTQ plus community, where you have these kids who were basically middle class kids who come out and get kicked out, and then suddenly they're homeless with no street skills at all.
Yeah, every time I see someone who becomes, they come to us, and you can kind of tell that they don't have the street skills. That's always a scary thing for me. I mean, it's always sad to see people having to live in this situation, but there's a lot of scary things out on the street, and there's a skill set that you acquire over time.
Yeah.
But yeah, when you're first out there, it is terrifying.
I can only imagine how they have to sleep with one eye open. So all right. So who do you communicate with besides the people? Like in the soup kitchen, do you work with youth councils or advisory councils or any kind of people like that to sort of find out what's current?
The soup kitchen serves. We sit on a lot of different committees and networks, and Mercer County has a very strong continuum of care. The Human Services Advisory Council is very active, and there's a lot of nonprofits that sit on that council, and so the soup kitchen regularly has representatives that are meeting with people who work in the other nonprofits, and we regularly have conversations about what are the trends, what are you seeing, what are we seeing, what are the needs of the community, how can we address what needs to be done, what are you doing, what what can we do? How can we work together to solve
So,
this?
all right, so let's talk about your programs. What are you doing?
So, our main, besides meal service, we've got adult education program. We have case management. We have arts programs. We do music. We do creative writing. We do holiday things. We give out holiday presents like socks, coats.
You said something to me when we were talking before. You used the term soft skills.
Yes.
What's a soft skill?
Soft skill is something. Let me think how to define this. In terms of, it's a soft skills are the kind of skill sets of getting along with people, anger management, hygiene, kind of the things that you
The
can't.
things that get you fired.
Well, you can't get a job without them. If you walk into an interview and you're not dressed properly, you smell bad. You know, they're probably gonna be like, "Oh, thank you, it was nice to meet you," and cross them off the list.
Yeah.
So those are things that you're expected to have that are not necessarily innate. You're not born knowing them. If someone doesn't teach them to you, then you may not have them.
Right.
So soft skills are something that it's in our new sites of how to teach things like, anger management. Anger management's a big one. We see a lot of people who have a hard time expressing when they're upset, and they do it in the wrong way at the wrong time. And it's really hard to keep a job if you're going to lash out at your boss.
Absolutely.
So
And we see that a lot. I mean, stemming in many instances from like childhood trauma and things
Right.
like that, where people learn to react fast and furiously to a perceived threat.
yes.
Even if the threat's not real,
Yes.
they learn to shut it down right away because otherwise they've gotten hurt.
Yes, and that's part of. I'm sure you've talked about the whole childhood trauma and the ACEs study, and
Sure.
the more traumatic experience you have happen to you, it's just the neurons in your brain, the synapses go faster in terms of they jump right into that fight or flight fear part.
Exactly.
And the longer you live in that primal part of your brain, it just makes it so someone says the wrong thing to you and you jump into fight or flight, and now you can't have a conversation like a normal person anymore
Right.
because you are so
So wired to be that way.
to be ready to defend yourself.
Yeah.
And that's something that takes time to undo.
Yeah. And something that a lot of us who are not a part of that world don't comprehend. It just looks like mean, aggressive, cruel behavior, and we don't realize that it comes from a place where that's how the wiring has been developed.
I mean, I don't sleep in a neighborhood where I hear gunshots outside my window.
Right.
And that's that's something that automatically it puts me at an advantage because I don't have to deal with that.
Absolutely. And yet the people that both of us serve do.
Right.
Sleep in places.
Yeah.
where
When you have to know that there's gunshots happening outside your window, it automatically changes.
Absolutely. So and what about? So is that separate? Do you separate soft skills from life skills?
Yes and no. It's kind of we're kind of trying at this point. We're trying to learn what's the best way to teach these. We have a couple different methods.
Yeah.
We're going to try online learning. We're going to try small classes, one-on-one. We're going to try as many different things. And part of what we're trying to do too is evaluate and see, okay, how are we doing? Are people learning the desired skills? If not, how do we change to make sure that they are?
Right. Okay. So you mentioned a program that really caught my attention, and it's called Send Hunger Packing, and this has to do with young people.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. So Send Hunger Packing, we do that in partnership with Mercer Street Friends Food Bank, and that is a program where schools that we partner with will identify children that they think are not getting enough food on the weekends. Many times they qualify for free and reduced lunch, but the teachers kind of can tell that they come to school on Monday and they're very hungry, and then there's a lot of indicators. So through Send Hunger Packing, these kids will get meals to go. They'll get non-perishable food with them to have over the weekend.
Over the weekend, so that they have a shot.
Right. So it's just to close
getting
that gap. I
meal.
mean, how can you expect anybody to advance in school when they didn't eat for 2 days.
Yeah, and again, the root cause is not being addressed. It gets dumped on the school
Right.
to find a way to create a liaison with you, to figure out a way to get these kids instead of teach is what I'm saying.
Right.
What the school
Yeah,
would rather be doing.
Right. And I mean, as a teacher, how are you supposed to teach a kid who has,
Who's starving?
Yeah, if they're starving,
Yeah.
how are you? They're not going to listen to you. Like,
Well, they can't.
so yeah.
Yeah, they simply can't. So that's a beautiful program helping children eat. We love that. And something else that also struck me too is that, I mean, you do have this pretty serious adult education program that's been going on for a long time.
Right.
And you give one-to-one tutoring.
Right. Yeah. That's
people.
our big. That's besides meal service. That's our biggest program. I think is the one-on-one tutoring and just making sure that people have the resources to help them learn.
But to round it out, you do something that I think is so beautiful. It struck me when you said it before. You're a big advocate for the arts.
Oh yes, that's that's like my life mission. Is
Creating
arts.
well-rounded individuals.
Right.
You know, we call it in enrichment. you know,
Yes. Well, but
in
it's
what we do.
it's something that the way that I kind of look at it too is there are some folks who, they are creative. I mean, I think everyone's creative by nature, but there are some folks who need to express their creativity, and if they are not given a positive way to do so, they will do it in a way that is not positive.
Uh-huh.
And so the creativity will come out whether or not we want it to. It's a
Right.
matter of giving a healthy outlet, something that is positive, something that can be constructive.
Constructive instead of destructive.
Yeah.
So how do you identify sort of recruits for these various programs? I know for Send Hunger Packing, the school
Right.
will identify people, but
For
is there a big sign first of all? That
our biggest is word of mouth. Is
Yeah.
that the folks who use our services will talk about it to the folks that they hang out with, and then their friends will come. So we really, in terms of recruiting, it's mostly word of mouth. We sometimes go to community fairs and stuff, and we'll
make them aware.
yeah, and there's also the reentry community. Anybody who's coming out of prison, there's a network of organizations that meet regularly, so we share our information with them.
Right.
So anytime there's an opportunity to be in the community and tell people about our services, we'll go and we'll give out information. But word of mouth is our biggest advertiser by far.
And how do you get volunteers?
Volunteers. So we've been blessed so far. We've got about 3,500 volunteers every year, and we don't. In terms of advertising, we'll go to volunteer fairs sometimes, and we will recruit to that degree. But I guess it's probably word of mouth also. That there was a lot of folks who've been coming for 30 years. They just keep coming back, and
That's wonderful.
yeah. We can't do the work without them. So
Yeah.
we're very grateful. We've got a lot of corporations that will come and send volunteer groups. We'll have some social clubs will get together and come and volunteer, and families. Sometimes there's individuals who will just come on their own. So we're very lucky to have such a strong support network of people who care.
Excellent. They get food and they get a smile.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. And that's almost it's very important to kind of have all those volunteers, because it's like in a sense it can be difficult because it's like having a staff change a few times a day, but the good part about it is that people always have a fresh face, and it's really nice it's nice for our patrons to know that they're not forgotten and that there are people out there who care about them.
Absolutely. It's a beautiful thing, the Trenton Area Soup Kitchen. I'm sorry that's all the time we have tonight, but I hope you'll come back at some future time and keep us apprised on the progress of your programs.
Absolutely.
Okay?
No, thank you so much
Let
for
us know
having
what you're
me.
doing in the community. It's a pleasure. Jamie Parker from the Trenton Area Soup Kitchen. Short break, and I'll be back with some final words. And we are back. Well, what can I tell you? Oklahoma Governor Mary Fallin has done it again. Just when we were feeling so good, She went and signed into law a bill that permits the state's faith-based child welfare partners to discriminate against same-sex couples, single or unmarried people, and possibly even LGBTQ youth. The law protects faith-based groups by permitting them to decline foster parent and adoption services to people or couples based on the religious principles of the organization. Okay, all right, two sides to the argument, and you decide. You decide. Fallon argues that the law allows faith-based agencies that contract with Oklahoma to continue to operate in accordance with their beliefs. She contends it will lead to more options for loving homes to serve Oklahoma children. Now, an LGBTQ rights group claims that it will codify discrimination and make it more difficult to place the over 9,000 children and youth in the foster care system, and will have a detrimental effect on our state's already struggling economy. So which one is right? Oklahoma is the 8th state to pass such a law since 2015, when the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that same-sex marriage was to be recognized in all of the 50 states and territories. Kansas will likely soon become the 9th. A similar bill has passed through the legislature in Kansas, and Governor Jeff Collier's administration has already voiced support for the bill. The 7 states with such legislation already on the books are Alabama, North Dakota, South Dakota, Virginia, Mississippi, Michigan, and Texas. Now, Fallon's statement lays clear the motivation for such laws. And what she says is it's the ability to tap into the faith community to recruit and retain enough foster and adoptive parents to meet the number of placements needed. The overall number of youth in care, as you all know, has steadily risen since 2012. And as evidence of this, Fallon says other states that have declined the protection to faith-based agencies have seen these agencies close their doors, leaving fewer options for successful placement of children. So Fallon is arguing that without this, there will be less chance for children to be placed. So here are the facts. The facts are that the number of foster homes has increased sharply without faith-based protections. The state had a non-relative foster bed capacity of 2,310 in 2012. And by 2017, that capacity had risen to 5,612. The surge has been attributed in part to a program called Oklahoma Fosters, which is a state-funded campaign to raise the state's capacity. So the facts actually argue against the argument to do this sort of thing. And the slippery slope is that while the bill's aim is to permit discrimination against adults interested in fostering and adoption, but it can be used in arguments where faith-based groups decline services to foster youth based on an LGBTQ status or religious background. Well, to learn more about what you can do to support overturning of such destructive laws, go to the website for an organization called Freedom Oklahoma. Freedom Oklahoma. On Capitol Hill, Congress has bills supporting and forbidding faith-based protections. Both bills are in various committees in Congress right now. The Child Welfare Provider Inclusion Act would empower the Department of Health and Human Services to financially penalize a state that takes adverse reaction against child welfare service provider on the basis that provider has declined or will decline to provide, facilitate, or refer for a child welfare service that conflicts with religious beliefs. But John Lewis, Democrat from Georgia, has introduced a bill that would do the exact opposite. Lewis's Every Child Deserves a Family Act prohibits any recipient of federal assistance for adoption and foster care placements from discriminating against any potential client. There's also a related lawsuit moving against the Department of Health and Human Services. A same-sex couple hoping to foster and/or adopt a refugee was declined for approval by a faith-based grantee of Health and Human Services because the couple did not, and here's a quote, because the couple did not mirror the Holy Family. Mirror the Holy Family. So they were denied the chance to adopt a refugee, and who knows what happens to the refugee. So, well, here's some good news. Here's a piece of good news. There's an approach called restorative justice on juveniles that people are finding can be more effective than traditional methods. We talked earlier in the program about reforming the probation system. Restorative justice programs are often used as a diversion or alternative to incarceration. It's an approach that brings offenders together with victims in a spirit of reconciliation. Generally, a youth is required to admit guilt, discuss the events with people it affected, and work out a plan to account for his or her actions. Among the most visible restorative programs in the country are the community conferencing models employed in Oakland, California, and Baltimore, Maryland. Karen Karp, who heads the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention for the Trump administration, has supported restorative justice models as a part of a continuum called community prosecution. Denver's implementation of restorative programs in schools has been associated with a massive decrease in school suspensions. Denver Public Schools suspended about 11,000 of its 70,000 students in 2006. What a percentage! 11,000 out of 70,000 Denver students were suspended in 2006. By 2017, with 92,000 students, the system suspended just 4,500 students. So that's heading in the right direction. Finally, tonight, California State University at Long Beach publishes the Daily 49er, it's called, and James Chow recounted a panel discussion relating to the barriers foster youth had encountered while attempting to balance mental health issues, housing stability, and homelessness. It produced an interesting, sort of window into the life. There was one woman who was at the conference who was put into the foster system at age 6. Her biological father was never around, and her mother struggled with substance abuse. And basically what it boils down to is that people who have been in the foster care system for a long time have no skills when they finally age out of the system. And thankfully there are some new programs that are designed to help people get those skills and be able to transition effectively into an adult lifestyle. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, another hour talking about youth who should matter more in our political discourse. And we thank you so much for tuning in and maybe helping us spread the word. Again, we offer humble thanks to Hamilton Radio and to my very special guest tonight, Jamie Parker from the Trenton Area Soup Kitchen. Join me next Thursday, May 24th at 8 p.m. Live young people in the studio next week. Until then, let's make this week the best week ever. Good night.